Okay, we could start now, Kat.
Awesome. 1 second here.
Right here, right
I
here.
might
Down
be
the bottom.
just
You're pointing. There we go. More this way. Okay. Yeah.
Should I start with the roll call?
Kat, are you still here with us? Stand by. We lost our chair.
Is Jacob on?
Here she comes.
She's back.
John, if you can be on standby or in case we lose her.
I'm back. Can you
I
hear me?
can't, I'm not prepared, but Kat's got it.
All right, Kat, we are ready to go when you're ready to go.
Thank you for being on standby, Sean.
Your arrow.
I love computer issues. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Salem Airport Advisory Commission meeting. Let's call this meeting to order. Irma, would you like to do roll call?
Okay, yes. John Foley,
Present.
Lieutenant Nathan Edgecombe. I think he's here. Douglas Bernizier. He's here too.
Yeah, sorry, that's Brenizer and I'm here.
Okay, Bernizier, thank you.
You bet.
And Kat Pence,
Here.
thank you. Neil White,
Present.
Mike Morrow,
Here,
Verstuf Arnaud,
Here.
and I think that's it. We're all here.
Perfect. Before we move on, I would like to welcome City Councilor Vanessa Nordyke, who was recently appointed by Mayor Bennett as City Council Liaison to the Airport Advisory Commission. Councilor Nordyke, would you like to introduce yourself or say a few words?
Kat, I don't see that she's on the participant list. I don't know if she's going to
Not
make her
here?
way. Yeah, she said that she'd be able to make the introductions, that she had a conflict at 6:30. So maybe
Okay,
we can
perfect.
circle back to her if she shows up.
Absolutely. Before we move on then, let's see, we have several guests and presenters today. But to avoid the chaos, let's keep everyone on mute unless you're actually called upon to speak, because it can get a little bit chaotic if we're all talking and dogs in the background and all that stuff. Let's go ahead and move on to the approval of the agenda. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at that? Yes? Awesome. Anything that needs to be changed? Nope. Okay, perfect. Can we have someone move to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
All right, thank you so much. Is there a second?
second,
Perfect. Let's do a roll call vote. John Foley,
Yes.
Doug Brenizer,
Yes.
Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe. Okay. Neil White,
Yes.
Mike Morrow,
yes,
Arnaud,
Yes.
Kat Pence, yes. Perfect. Let's look at the approval of the minutes. Has everyone received and reviewed the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything we need to change? I didn't see anything.
I'd noticed some typo in the motion. It wasn't quite exactly the text that was submitted, but it's pretty close. And I assume that the statement already went to the city council, so I don't know if it needs to be fixed, but
Okay, perfect. Let's take a look at that. I know we changed the wording so many times in the last meeting. It looks fairly close. I'm fine leaving it if everyone else is. Or John, would you like to change it?
maybe spell AAC instead of ACC. That
No,
would
well, there's that one.
be-
Irma, did you catch that? Will we be changing? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
I so move.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Perfect. Let's do a roll call vote. John Foley,
Yes.
Doug Brenizer,
Yes.
Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe. I would establish he's not here.
He's on mute.
He is on mute.
I don't know if
Perfect.
he's on perma-mute or if that's,
He introduced himself and said that he was here, but I haven't heard from him since.
Okay. Neil White,
Yes.
Mike Morrow,
Yes.
Arnaud Versteff,
Yes.
Kat Pence, yes. Awesome. Public comment. I don't believe that we had any public comment come in. I didn't see any. Anyone else? Okay, perfect. We have 3 presentations today. John Pascal, would you introduce the first?
I will. And Madam Chair, if I'm remiss, I just noticed that my boss, Kristen Rutherford, the Urban Development Director, is on the call. I just saw her screen pop up there, so I'd like to introduce her to everyone.
Thank you. I'm just here lurking and listening.
Great, thanks,
Lurk
Kristen.
away.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have 3 presentations tonight. The first is Oregon Department of Human Services, Office of Emergency Management and Resilience. Spencer Carroll and Ed Flick are here to provide you with a presentation from an evolution that they did earlier this year. Spencer, it's all yours.
Thanks, John. Hello, City of Salem Airport Advisory Commission. My name is Spencer Carroll. I am the Policy and Mission Support Chief for the Office of Resilience and Emergency Management within the Oregon Department of Human Services. I'd like to introduce my boss, who probably needs no introduction to most of you, Ed Flick.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have a chance to provide some brief comments. We have enjoyed the partnership with the City of Salem and the airport, and it's a relationship that goes back to my time as the Marion County Emergency Manager. So we're excited to just share with you just a brief overview of how we see the airport in the broader scheme and some of the work we did back in February. So Spencer's got some slides we're going to put up. Again, I'm the director of our Office of Resilience and Emergency Management. And again, thanks for the chance. Next slide. I want to just first point out that here at the Department of Human Services, we take equity really, really seriously. We recognize that some people are disproportionately impacted by disasters, and so that animates us in all of our planning and when we respond, thinking about how we can reduce the likelihood or impact of disasters on people, particularly those that have the lowest ability to cope. Next slide. For the department, there's 3 buckets of priorities, and I'm really happy to say that as an agency, our director, Fairborth Pakaresh, has put emergency response and preparedness right at the center. And these are his 3 priorities. You know, we have a specific role to play in the state enterprise in supporting local jurisdictions to respond. And I'm just really happy that our agency has put such an emphasis on this particular area. Next slide. So for those of you that don't know, the Department of Human Services has some specific roles that we've been given in the comprehensive statewide emergency operations plan. The language in plain English is we're responsible to take care of folks by providing them emergency shelter, food, water. That extends to assisting families to be reunified with one another and providing assistance to people during evacuations. We also have a role in recovery, which really relates to helping people and individual households and social service systems bounce back. But really the focus here is those responsibilities under what we broad overly, the overview is really mass care. Next slide. We really have 4 different buckets of work that kind of has shaped out. One is in community emergency assistance. We also look at emergent issues. Those are things that are typically less than a large scale emergency or disaster. We've also done a lot of work in the last couple of years on our COVID-19 response And then the thing we're probably most known for is our response to natural disasters, and most specifically the 2020 wildfires. Across all of those mission portfolios, though, we support the agency's work to provide services to Oregonians. About 1.6 million Oregonians receive direct services from ODHS every day. And we have 1,600 facilities that we either operate or regulate out in the community. So together, this sort of captures the work. You know, this emerging community assistance mission has become more and more important to us as we think about how we support local jurisdictions and partners to respond to things like heat, cold, and of course, what's really on the agenda today is, of course, cleaner air sheltering. The emergent issues, a good example of that, we've helped to provide shelter to about 1,000 Afghan refugees who've come to the United States and Oregon to continue their life. COVID, you know, we really have provided a social service component to that that mission. But again, it's a pretty wide range. There's very little that occurs in emergency or disasters that doesn't have an impact on people, and so that's really where our agency fits in the broader picture. Next slide. We as an office really came out of the state's response to the 2020 wildfires, and I don't need to tell you how impactful that was to Marion County in ways that I never would have expected when I was the county emergency manager. But you know, we started out as an agency with just a couple of people doing emergency management, and that was just not nearly up to the task that we have as an agency to do our task. And from there, our director asked me to come on board the day after Labor Day. When I had left Marion County, I worked for about 18 months at Oregon Health Authority. And so we started really the day after Labor Day, and we've grown the office. And it's really significant because as we have grown, you know, our director asked me to build an office, not just to respond to those wildfires, but also to get ready for Cascadia, which is really the thrust of what I hope to share with you this evening. You know, we have been underinvested as a state in mass care. And when we start talking to local partners like you about how the key features like an airfield may fit into that picture, we're in a position now to begin doing work that the state hadn't really been able to do in the past, to think about how that may work. Next slide. Again, you know, we're really committed to survivors. We are in the business of helping people every single day. And you know, that really provides a human focus to the ways that we see the airport would fit into a large scale Cascadia response. Next slide. The wildfire response, you know, we were speaking to a legislator this afternoon, and it really did start to help us think about the scope of what a large scale disaster would require in a state and local response. And those numbers, although they seem really fantastic and large, really do pale though into what we'd expect from a Cascadia. But through this experience of providing shelter to over 4,400 people, you know, providing long-term disaster recovery assistance through partners to thousands of households, providing wraparound services, you know, we start to think about how large a disaster response can be, and how we need to think differently about emergency management to be prepared for those kind of things. Of course, through this experience, we've learned it's really hard to build an organization after a disaster to do disaster response on scale, although we've done the very best we could. So I like to think that we still have time to be more proactive in how we shape the environment for something like Cascadia, to be more prepared when that day comes. Next slide. So again, when I worked for the county and working with Greg Walsh and Roger Stevenson before him, we've always known that the Salem Airfield was key terrain. We knew that it was going to be an important part of state response. We participated in a FEMA assessment of the airfield, I think back in 2019. And I've always been interested to move that planning forward though, and think how could we actually utilize the airfield space to support Oregon in a large scale disaster. So one of the things that we've made time to do while we were working on the fire response and everything else was to establish an exercise series where we actually begin to work with local partners and work through the problem to understand how we take concepts out of PowerPoint and actually put them to work to really build capabilities to be put to use. So back in February, we conducted the first of this exercise series called Able Readiness 1. Next slide. So Able Readiness 1 is all about how we as the Department of Human Services can support efforts to receive people evacuated from the coast that are going to come through Salem and other airfields in the Willamette Valley and the Rogue Valley in order to facilitate their movement to safety. And the equipment you're seeing in these pictures are equipment that we own. We now as a department have 3 sets of that equipment. And we really took the sum of knowledge that we've been able to gather over the various years in practice. We have a wonderful diverse team of emergency managers and social service professionals and others that really thought through what would we like to have on that day. And we put it out there at the airfield to see what it looked like. Next slide. Part of what we know is that there's going to be a lot of demands on the buildings in the airfield, and that some of those will be available for use and others won't. So in this equipment set that we have, and we call it an evacuation assistance point, where a evacuee assistance task force would operate, we have everything we need to operate from a bare field in order to perform that function. And one of the first things that we need is the ability to command and control, to understand what's happened and to provide coordination. And that's both tents, it's also people, and it's the radio equipment and everything that would operate that. Next slide. We also know that hygiene is going to be very important. And so in this set, we have the provisions to provide latrines and showers. Now, these require energy, which is always going to be a challenge. We also have other equipment that would provide a little less sophisticated hygiene, but it is part of the plan. Next slide. You know, we're in the people business, and we know that when people are evacuated, it's going to be their worst day or one of their worst days. And so there's actually a picture of our operations section chief, Chad Knowles, showing how we would try and have a trauma-informed approach in the work that we would do. I'm not sure that he's actually related to Baby Yoda, but he does have an affinity towards him. Next slide. Really, the purpose of bringing this forward is, you know, for all the years I've worked with John and the folks at the airfield and with the city, we've talked a lot about how we could utilize Salem and the role it would play. I know that with Neil and others, there's always been a focus on building the ability of the field to respond. We wanted to put some of that to test and see how it would actually work. And so as an office and within our agency and within our roles that we're given in the emergency operations plan, we intend to continue to figure out how we would use these state staging areas and what kind of improvements would be useful there, and take these ideas out of PowerPoint. And God forbid that day does come, that we're just going to be a little more prepared. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ed. That's a great presentation. Yeah, any of the council members have any questions?
Just one. Is this presentation going to be available to us?
Absolutely. I can send a copy of this PowerPoint to John and he can disseminate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I would encourage you to follow the YouTube links. Capital Media did a wonderful job to document the exercise, and we'll give it a lot more informative perspective than I was able to offer in a few minutes. And so CCTV has always been a great partner. You know, the years I got to work with Alan I treasure. And so I'd encourage you to follow the link and see in more detail what we did there and what we have the ability to do now there and other places.
Yeah, if you could send that link along with the presentation, Spencer, I can disseminate that.
Yeah, the link is in the last slide of the deck,
Oh,
but
great. Okay.
overall, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, John, and the entire advisory commission for allowing us to do that at your airport and giving us the trust to do that. Ed and I were really touched and overwhelmed with the trust that you put in us and allowed us to conduct this really fantastic demonstration of what we envision to be more prepared for disasters to come. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of our heart.
Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate it.
I
Thank
have
you so
one
much.
question, if I can. Ed, were there things when you did this exercise, were there things infrastructure-wise at the airport that you found that could be areas of improvement or things that we could do to be more ready for such an event? And I know you've worked, you know, in the past with Neil and John to come up with an emergency readiness plan. I don't know if there were other things you learned from that exercise that were useful.
There really are. You know, I think as state and federal planning for Cascadia advances, we understand the role of the staging areas a little better. One of the things that is really a gap is the availability of structures that we can provide shelter to people while they're in transit further east to safety. So that's a challenge. I also think just understanding where space may be available that we could set up and deconflict the various operations. You know, on that day, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be being pushed west, and there's going to be a lot of people coming east, right? And so figuring out and advancing the planning for how we're actually going to use both the airport space itself and also the adjacent spaces to deconflict and have that in greater detail would be great. And then what can we do to pre-position supplies and equipment? You know, there was some great lessons that came out of the FEMA airfield study. You know, what is actually energized on the field, right, with the backup power? What kind of communications are going to be available there? What kind of fuel is on hand? Those are all, you know, what kind of material handling equipment might be available. From a mass care perspective, you know, we don't want to create problems in Salem because it is also going to be affected. And so what realistically could we have in place to facilitate? And really the key question in all of this, and from my international work, is where are we going to transition from rotary wing to fixed wing aircraft? And how are we going to facilitate the movement of people as they make that transition? You know, I think that those are some of the questions. So certainly we learned a lot, and I think we can provide more input back on how we can improve the physical space there in ways that would benefit us in a Cascadia response, but also would make the airfield more useful and resilient for other circumstances.
Seems like we have an opportunity with the upcoming master plan maybe to address some of those things, possibly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ed. Any other questions? Okay, before our next presenter, I am going to introduce Councilor Vanessa Nordyke. Like I said earlier, she has just been appointed by Mayor Bennett as the City Council liaison to the Airport Advisory Commission. Councilor Nordyke, would you like to say a few words or introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. And my apologies, I can only check in and check out briefly for this meeting due to some pre-existing obligations on my calendar this evening. But it's an honor to be here and to participate on the Airport Advisory Commission. I've already had the privilege of getting a tour of the airport from one of your local pilots, and I've gone up in the air and zoomed around the city of Salem myself. So I'm here to be a resource, and my goal is to listen and also to help be a connector. Even if I'm not your city councilor, I believe strongly that this community benefits from an open line of communication with your city government and with your city councilors specifically. So I would like to do everything that we can to ensure that you folks are fully aware of everything that's going on at council that could impact the airport, that could impact you if you use the airport, fly out of the airport, rent hangar space out of the airport, sell fuel to the airport, whatever your connection is to the airport. It's important that we have these open lines of communication. And so I'm here to be a part of that. I'll be sure to drop my email in the chat. I have to leave in literally 4 minutes because I'm giving a speech to the League of Women Voters tonight on our bond measure. So I'm very sorry that I'm not able to join you meaningfully tonight, but I look forward to future opportunities to get to know each and every one of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to move on to our next presenter tonight. John, would you like to introduce them?
Okay, yes, and thank you, Councilor Nordyke. Glad that you're here. Our next presenter is Terry Duran. Terry is the president and CEO of the Vietnam Air War Hall of Remembrance. I am going to actually bring up Terry's slides on his behalf, if I can pull them up. And Terry, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, we'll get started.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you very much for letting me join you this evening. We're a group of couple of veterans, airplane enthusiasts, and our goal is to honor our Vietnam veterans who served this nation during a very turbulent period in our history. As we all know, they received a very poor welcome home, but my generation, when we came home from Desert Storm, there were parades, thank yous, and a lot of accolades for my generation. So one of the main things and points of this is to acknowledge our Vietnam veterans and to thank them. Because when I came into the Air Force, they were my mentors and they taught me and turned their Air Force over to my generation. And I have to say, we had superb mentors and teachers. So.
Terry, this is John. Can I jump in? Can everyone see my screen? Can you see the slides?
Can't
Nope,
see.
not-
No slides.
Slides. Okay. I'm struggling. It's popped up on all three of my computer screens here, and I'm not sure which one I should be sharing. Stand by with me here if you would. Let me try screen 2 here. I test drove this earlier today. Is it up? No?
I don't have anything on my
All
screen.
right, stand by. I'm going to try screen 1. We've got multiple screens here.
We've all been there. By the way, I noticed Chad's disabled. So my email address is vnordyke@cityofsalem.net, similar to how many of the city employees organize it. It's your first initial from your first name and then your full last name. So
Thank you so much.
of course.
Okay, stand by here.
You got this, John. We believe in you.
Yeah, I've done it before. I can do it. Confused why it's over on this screen, but it pops up on my other screens. All right. We need some hold music here.
A little elevator music.
It says that I need to share screen 1. Terry, I
Don't,
apologize.
don't let it stress you out that your boss is watching.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening here. It's terrible. Comes up on my screens, but then I can't see anything else. That's what I'm struggling with here.
Folks, I have to transition to the League of Women Voters event this evening, but I look forward to joining you and again, meaningfully participating in future conversations. In the meantime, if anyone would like to do a sidebar, coffee, lunch, whatever, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to hear and learn more from you and what our needs are for our airport's future. Take care, one and all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor.
You got it.
All right.
Ah,
Do we have, can you
There
see
it
my
is.
screen? All right.
there we go.
Let me see if I can, is it still there? Full screen?
It
Yes.
is full screen.
We have it.
All right, Terry, take it away.
Okay.
So sorry.
Well,
Long day.
technology is not my friend either.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll scroll to your next slide since you did your introduction. Can you see it?
We're still on the first slide.
Is it not scrolling here? Oh, for the love of God. All right, let's go this way if I can.
There we are.
That move it? All right.
There we are.
Apologies.
Well, as you can see, our intent is to become one of the leading repositories for the Vietnam Era War, while we have the opportunity to educate students, because to the north of us is the Woodburn School District, the south is Albany, and to the east is Cascade and obviously Salem School District. The thought is that we will have a classroom setting where teachers can bring their students in, explain some of the Vietnam War, and then be able to take them out onto the floor and show them exhibits so that they get a full understanding of what the Vietnam War was about, the turbulent 60s. So that's one of the main things. And as it turns out, I do have a master's in history, and what I am going to be proposing to Chemeketa is to teach a history class on the Vietnam experience, the turbulent 60s and into the early 70s, so that this facility will be utilized. Next slide, please. The intent here is that we're going to start small. We have a line right now on an F-100F down at Mojave, and the gentleman is right on the cusp of donating it to us. And once that is done, we would bring it up here, and our intent is to start off small and create the Misty Mission exhibit where F-100Fs were used, and the American culture of the 60s and 70s, and then bring in potential donors to show them what is possible and how we can serve our community. Next slide, please. Our intent is to bring in at least one aircraft in the beginning from each branch of the service. As mentioned, we have a line on an F-100F, plus I'm aware of a F-105 down in Texas as well. And we can always get an F-4 from the Davis-Monthan Boneyard through the National Museum of the United States Air Force. Next slide, please. And from the Army, we now have a line on a Cobra helicopter down in Louisiana and a Huey as well. And as we know, the Vietnam War was called the Helicopter War. And it is amazing how we were able to treat our wounded because of the Huey helicopter, how we could get them out of the battle zone and to triage so quickly. So a gentleman I know, he was what is called a slick pilot at the end of the Vietnam era, and he can add a tremendous amount to this. Next slide, please. And as there are F-8 Crusaders and A-4s and F-4Js that the Navy flew. As mentioned, we'd like to bring in an aircraft, at least one aircraft from every branch of the service so that every branch is honored and remembered. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, one of the very important elements of this exhibit so that we can meet the needs, educational needs, is the American home front. For those of you who grew up in the 60s like I did, I was in grade school and middle school during the Vietnam era, and I recall the Democratic Convention of 1968. I recall the Newsweek magazine during the Kent shooting. My brother brought that home, and I have a very vivid memory of that. And of course, we had the riots in Watts and Detroit as well. It was a terribly turbulent time that shaped us into who we are today. And so if we can convey this and teach this to students in the high schools or junior highs and teach it as a class through Chemeketa, that way we'll be able to better serve our community and educate our young students, children, on our history. Next slide, please. One of the key elements of this also is a veterans coffee bar. This would be a place where veterans, say Tuesdays and Thursdays, can come in, have free coffee, free pastries, and talk with one another. And the motto, as you can see, a place to come, to talk, and to heal. veterans, we have our own language. I served 31 years in the Air Force. And as mentioned, we kind of have our own language and we relate to one another and we understand one another and we can open up to one another. So this becomes a very, very important element, reaching out to our vets. Additionally, we would want to bring in like social services for veterans that are having maybe a rough go in life. Bring in the VA, the county VA, and provide a service to them to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. Next slide, please. Well, what a full-scale museum would include is so often the museums are about the airplane and the pilots. They forget about the mechanics who service those airplanes. They forget about the security specialists that protected the airfield so that we could do our job. As it turns out, one of my friends who owns 3 aviation magazines and a nautical magazine, he was a reporter in Vietnam, and they definitely have a story to be told. He was on one of the last airplanes to get out of Vietnam for the reporters. Additionally, to talk about the nurses and the trauma that they suffered afterwards. So to tell these stories of the entire experience of Vietnam, and just not airplanes alone, but that way people will get the recognition they deserve and the public will have a better understanding of that period of history in America. Next slide, please. If we were able to, as I say, go into a full-blown museum, we would want to create a Gold Star Garden. This would be to honor all the families that had lost loved ones in the service of our country. At the center of this garden would be a statue of a mother/wife having her arm wrapped around a child holding a Western Union telegram in her hand, informing her of the loss. I think this is, terribly important because they paid the ultimate price along with their loved ones, and we do need to remember them. I have to admit, I get real emotional about this because I served with them and I know the loss. Next slide, please. Let's see here. Once a year, as mentioned, we'd want to do a Veterans Down Day. Once again, that's where you'd bring in VA representatives, possibly Union Gospel Mission, social services, and other services to help our veterans and make sure that they don't fall through the cracks. The VA Center out on Portland Road, they do have a down day as well, but we'd like to combine with them and make this a little bit bigger, a little bit broader so we can reach out to more veterans and help more vets. Next slide, please. The one thing that's going to make us different is this is pure volunteerism. Nobody gets a salary. So if you want to help, it will be on a volunteer status. And so any donation made to us will go to the maintaining of the aircraft, the exhibits, and the facility. And as I say right now, our board is made up of a couple veterans, aircraft enthusiasts, so that we can assure 100% accuracy. And as it turns out, our Air Force Chief of Staff from 90 to 94 is General McPeak, and he's one of our advisors and consultants. And then General Fogelman, who is Air Force Chief of Staff 94 to 98, has also consented to being one of our consultants and advisors, ensuring 100% accuracy in our exhibits. So that is our goal, is to honor our veterans and remember them, and remember the Gold Star families as well, and those who serve this nation, as I said, in a very turbulent time. So thank you for your time and for listening. Does anyone have any questions by chance?
Hey, Terry,
Mr. Neal.
if you would get a hold of me, I may have a lead of a Huey that's down in Woodburn.
Oh my gosh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Neil.
Okay.
Let's see. I don't have your number, Neil. And it's good to see you. Neil and I worked together in the past.
John Pascal has my number.
Okay, I'll get it from John.
Okay.
Yeah. If there are any other questions.
Yeah, hello. Can you
Yes.
hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. I'm sorry earlier. I don't know why I got on permanent mute, but this is Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe with the Oregon National Guard. Sir, just so you know, I'm the commander over at the AASF, which is across the street from the main airport, and we have a OH-1 Mohawk on display as well as a Huey that could be visited.
Oh, yes.
And I also have a lead, one of my mentors, a Colonel retired Windus. One of his good buddies has a flyable Loach and Huey.
Really?
With
Those are hard to come by.
Yeah, they're very hard to come by. The guy, he lives
Yes.
up in Battleground, Washington. So I could definitely make a call for something like that if you're interested, or if you wanted to bring some people over and see some current helicopters as well for the Army side.
Yes, very fast, sir. A thought is, as we get these helicopters in, I don't know if this is what we did on the Air Force side, is that we would take and use our airmen to maybe repair and do sheet metal work and what have you, and then they would learn about their history and the Air Force legacy. I don't know if this would be possible with the Army Guard, as we get these helicopters, that they can maybe do some of the prepping and work on them to restore them. That way they learn about their history and those who went before them.
Yeah, that would be awesome. The problem is that our maintenance force at our facility are DoD employees Monday through Friday, even though they wear the uniform. It's long story, but they're called technicians, and
Yes.
and that wouldn't be approved because of the scope of work within their what we call PDs, their position descriptions. 'Cause we went through that same thing when we brought the Mohawk in. We weren't allowed to touch it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, quite all right.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you.
John, if you could maybe email us out with a contact card for Terry, that'd be awesome, so everyone can get a hold of him if you need to.
I actually have a PDF of the presentation that he just
Perfect.
has his contact information, so I will email that to the commission.
Awesome.
If I may say, for some reason, our business line is not working. It just goes to voicemail. So please use my cell phone to get a hold of me. That'll be the best number.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Terry, for your presentation.
Well, thank you very much for having me once again.
Absolutely. John, could you please introduce our next presenter?
Yes, Madam Chair. Next is Mitch Hooper, and Mitch is the project manager with Mead and Hunt for the airport master plan update that is just getting ready to get underway. Mitch?
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. I have a brief presentation about the airport master plan. I'll get my screen up here in just a second and tell you a little bit about what the master plan is all about, what we're going to be looking at. As John mentioned, we are just getting started, so we're right at the beginning of our process. I'd also like to mention that I'm joined by my colleague, Marika Armstrong, also on the line with Mead and Hunt, and she will be leading the Mead and Hunt team and the delivery of this master plan.
Mitch, don't embarrass me and make that screen share easy. Oh, you did. All right.
John, just send me the presentation next time. Okay, away we go. I guess you're all able to see it. So on to the next one. So as I said, this is just a brief overview. I'll move through it. I know we've only got so much time tonight, but if anybody does have questions, please jump in at any time, or we can save them to the end. So just to start, a little bit about the project team. So Mead and Hunt is an architecture, engineering, and planning firm. We've been in the business of planning and designing airports for as long as there have been airports to plan and design. And we have had the good fortune of working with the city of Salem for, decades now, providing architectural, planning, engineering, and environmental services. So we've done quite a bit of work with the airport. And personally, I worked on the last airport master plan that was done about 11 or 12 years ago. On our team, we are a Oregon-focused team with Johnson Economics out of Portland, looking at non-aeronautical uses and highest and best use of some of the available land. Local to Salem, Barker Surveying is going to handle our on-site survey. Also out of Portland is JMG Consulting, who will be helping us with passenger terminal evaluation. And then GeoTerra out of Aurora. They fly out of Aurora. They're preparing our airport's GIS and aerial imagery acquisition. And then on the other side of the screen here, we've obviously got the city of Salem, who's the airport owner and sponsor, the Federal Aviation Administration, and this project will be overseen by the FAA Seattle Airports District Office, which oversees Washington and Oregon. And then right there on the airfield, you've got the Oregon Department of Aviation, who will also be a participant in the project. Just really quickly, if you're not familiar with an airport master plan, the key thing to impress here is that it is a capital improvement and facility plan. And airports like Salem do these about every 10 years. They look 20 years into the future, but once you get through about 10 years, it's generally, aviation is such a dynamic industry, it's really worth relooking at. It's FAA sponsored. That means the FAA pays for a large percentage of the project through the grants that they issue under the Airport Improvement Program. And because of that, we are required to look at some of the FAA standards and provide justification for funding of capital projects. The flip side of this is that there are some things that the Airport Master Plan is not, and this is because there's federal money involved in this. So it's not a business plan or a marketing plan. It's also not a wish list or any sort of guarantee of funding. Things that can go into them, you can put really whatever kind of facility you want in a master plan, but the FAA will not agree to pay for it if they don't believe it's justified and complies with their rules on funding. The nice thing about it is it's not a binding document. When we're doing planning for the future, there may be some things that make sense in 2022, 2023, that when it comes time to build them, maybe don't make as much sense. And so the airport certainly has that flexibility to pivot and choose not to build things that are in the master plan if the need for them has changed or the world that we live in has changed, which that's always occurring, and aviation is certainly not immune to that. And then lastly, it's not a document that sets policies or rates. It's not going to look at the use agreements that the airport has with its tenants or anything like that. Those are all handled separately. So this is not a document that will look into that. It's really just going to focus on the physical infrastructure of the airport. Some of the key elements of this plan, it's a 20-year facility plan. It's going to identify improvement projects and develop a capital improvement program, and it will address FAA funding eligibility. And the key thing that we are trying to provide is to make sure that the airport receives as much federal funding as it possibly can. It's a great way to really stretch the local dollar by getting those federal funds and then just providing the local match. It's going to consider future trends. So one of the big things in aviation right now is the different types of fuel that aircraft are going to be running on. That includes electric aircraft, that includes aircraft that are powered by hydrogen, that includes unleaded fuel for the smaller general aviation aircraft. We'll be looking at the facilities and infrastructure and demand for all of those things. There will be a robust stakeholder engagement with a study advisory committee and public meetings. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for folks to come in, find out what's going on with the master plan, and provide their feedback at key junctures. Sustainability and resiliency are key, and this is actually very timely. Some of these other presentations that have occurred today. We will be looking at local resiliency plans, looking at Cascadia and the role that the airport plays. The airport has been identified as an airport of importance by the state in their resiliency plan. And so there was some discussion a little bit earlier tonight about what sort of facilities does this airport need. The master plan is a great way to look at those and get those put on a list, and hopefully we can justify a little bit of funding for those to make the airport an even better facility to use in the event of a Cascadia event. Environmental preservation is another important element, looking at reducing the impact where we can, and if nothing else, trying to avoid anything that may have a negative effect on the environment. That includes emissions, that includes water, runoff, floodplains, threatened and endangered species, aircraft noise, all the different things that go into the natural environment will be evaluated. And then lastly, we'll be looking at air service, which if you've been following the news, that's a pretty hot topic locally. And so we'll be, the master plan with its 20-year look ahead, we'll be looking not just at what may be coming up soon, but what's the long range potential for air service at Salem and what sort of facilities may be needed for that service to be successful. Just looking, I think folks here are generally familiar with the airport, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the different facilities that are there, but some of the key areas that we will be looking at include the passenger terminal and looking at the existing building. And again, over the next 20 years, is this building the right building to be serving the local air service demand, or should the building be changed in some way? Should it be relocated? These things are all on the table. The master plan will look at it and gather feedback from the different stakeholders and arrive at a recommendation. We're going to be looking at the airfield layout. That is something that the FAA requires because their standards on what they will and will not pay for and what they consider an acceptable layout for the airfield are constantly changing. What I will say on that is that in a master plan, we don't start with a preconceived outcome of what we want the airfield to be. This is a collaborative process where we develop different alternatives and look at different ways to meet the future demand and make sure that the airport is operationally, financially, and environmentally resilient going into the future. Being a general aviation airport, I've talked quite a bit about the air service and commercial service, but we are definitely going to be including the general aviation facilities and make sure that those are appropriately located and sized so that the airport can accommodate that future demand. And then there's also the non-aeronautical properties, and make sure that the airport is generating revenue from various locations to help iron out some of the ebbs and flows of the aviation market. And what you'll find at a lot of airports is when they have non-aeronautical properties, that can help keep the airport in an advantageous financial position, help pay for some capital improvement projects on the airport, and then the airport doesn't necessarily have to come collecting that money from the users if they have additional revenue sources. So we'll want to look at what the potential is for that, where aviation and non-aviation can coexist in a compatible manner. We certainly don't want to introduce non-aeronautical uses that will negatively impact aviation because this is an airport first. And its primary objective is to safely and efficiently serve the needs of the flying public. As far as our schedule, we did just get started actually just at the start of this month. So we are moving ahead with our the first few bullets here: the inventory, the environmental overview, and starting to prepare the aviation demand forecasts. And that'll take us through to the end of the year. I did mention that there will be outreach, and the way that we do it is we make sure that we have something to actually share before we start our outreach events. So our outreach events will occur in the winter of, most likely winter 23. So think of the January, February timeframe. Once we've done enough of initial analysis of our forecasts, we can bring those forward to the stakeholders and get some feedback. From there, through the spring and summer and fall of 2023, that's when the majority of the work will be done. And I won't read all these questions, but these are essentially the questions that the master plan is looking to answer. And with the help and feedback from the various stakeholders and meetings that we have, we will ultimately arrive at answers to these questions and wrap this all up with an airport layout plan that the FAA signs, and they say, all right, we've reviewed your plan versus our standards, and we believe that the projects that you have presented are eligible for our financial participation and meet the requirements that we have for airports of your classification. So just to zoom a little bit more into the next 6 months here, as I said, that stakeholder involvement event in probably January, February after the holidays. And at that point, we will have gone through the existing conditions, environmental, and have something to talk about on the forecasts. And really on that first event, we like to brainstorm about the future of the airport. We'll present what we think the demand is going to be and collect feedback there. But then the fun starts, at least as someone who plans airports for a living, I call it the fun part, where we actually get to start laying out what the airport looks like. We get to start drawing taxiways and drawing buildings and moving things around and doing collaborative visioning sessions of what is this airport going to look like in 20 years, and what do we need to support electric aircraft, hydrogen aircraft, commercial service. What does the GA market need? Does the Guard need anything? Does Garmin need anything? All these different things that we look at all feed into the master plan and the preferred recommendation. So with that, I know that was a relatively high level, but if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to field them, or otherwise, if you pass them on to John, we can certainly answer that way.
Awesome, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? All right, Mitch, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Murky.
Okay, let's move on to reports. Is Rob here tonight, or John, are you going to be doing
Rob
that?
is not. Rob is once again short of a controller, so he is up in the tower as we speak. He sent me a very robust report that I will read almost verbatim because it's not my report. To start out, for the 2022 traffic count for the tower, the third quarter traffic count was 11,463. And that makes 36,767 so far for the year. Of course, I mentioned this before, the tower actually counts overflights through our airspace in their count. So the airport traffic count's a little bit less than that. Year to date, we're at 35,323 operations. which is about 2% higher than where we were in 2021. So I'm estimating that we'll end up at about 45 to 47,000 operations through the end of the year, which will be probably the third or fourth year in a row that we've incrementally grown our operations. So that's good. We'll see how the weather treats us the next 3 months. Rob did have a handful of what they call mandatory occurrence reports in the third quarter. Those are events that they're required to report to the FAA. One bird strike, it was a Piper PA-28. It was a 2-mile final for runway 31 at 1,500 feet. Landed without incident. Pilot reported a medium-sized bird strike on the nose cone. Upon inspection, pilot reported no damage to aircraft. And then they had 4 aircraft emergencies in the third quarter. So this is since our meeting in July. The first was a departure, I won't say the tail numbers, departure runway 34. Pilot requested to return to the airport, smelling smoke in the cockpit. Landed without incident. Aircraft rescue followed up with the pilot, and nothing was identified in the aircraft. The second was a departure from Salem to TVL. I guess I don't know where TVL is. Some of you pilots will know. Tower was notified by approach control that this aircraft would be returning to Salem VFRs, experiencing loss of engine power. The aircraft established communication with the tower, was instructed to make a straight into runway 34. It landed on 34, taxied to parking under their own power without incident. Aircraft rescue firefighting was dispatched. We had another locally based pilot, I won't say the company across the field, but one of their aircraft reported a rough running engine 8 miles west of the airport. It was instructed to report field in sight. It was cleared to land runway 31 and landed without incident. Aircraft rescue was also dispatched. And finally, another aircraft departed Salem eastbound, contacted Seattle Center, reported a rough running engine, declared an emergency and notified Salem Tower. Pilot returned to Salem and landed without incident. And again, aircraft rescue was dispatched. My experience with a lot of aircraft emergencies in 1 quarter. It's pretty unusual. Rob wanted me to let you know that their tower visitor policy has modified a little bit. They are now able to schedule tower tours on a limited basis. It's more staffing related now than COVID. So a lot of folks request tower tours, and he did want to let me know that they are once again 1 controller short, so they have a position open. That is everything from the tower chief's report. If there's any questions or any feedback you'd like me to give to Rob, please let me know.
Awesome, thank you so much. And did anybody have a question? No? Okay. Back to you, John, for the airport manager report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to the report that was submitted with the packet, I did want to add one last minute, and I'll just read it. It goes to the hangar compliance issue that we're continually chasing down on the airport. Did recently send 10 compliance notices to hangar owners regarding their non-compliance issues or potential non-compliance issues. 8 of them responded immediately and either provided evidence that they are in compliance or corrected their non-compliance. 2 of the 10 did not respond, so I sent formal notices of violation with a 30-day notice to cure, or their leases would be terminated. Both of those 2 have since replied and now confirmed compliance. So, you know, as we talk about, it's an ongoing issue. It's a moving target, but in the interest of trying to accommodate as many aircraft owners moving into the area and from other airports as possible, we'll continue to enforce compliance. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about anything in the report or any other questions anybody has.
Any questions?
It may just be record keeping on my part, but I'm not finding the report in my email. Can you tell me what date that went out?
Should have come with your meeting invite. There was an attachment and it had the agenda and then all of the background documentation, including the airport manager's report. It's typically how you would receive it.
Oh, attached to the bottom. Sorry. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. If there's no other questions, let's move on to our action item for the evening. It's in regards to a potential newcomer to the airport, Metal Innovations. John, again, would you please introduce them and give us a brief overview?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And waiting patiently in the wings are Kim and Craig Wilms from Metal Innovations. And I also see Jacob Lupton here from Hummingbird Architecture. I probably should have let them introduce their architect, but the three of them are here to provide a presentation to you and talk about their proposed development. We are currently slated to take their, presumably their new lease to City Council on November 14th. So it was important that we got this in front of the Airport Advisory Commission tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Kim and Craig.
I guess I'll be the one that starts out. I really appreciate John facilitating this and all of you being here this evening and taking time to, I guess, listen to what we have to say. I'm sure everybody has a lot of things going on right now. It's a very busy time for all of us. And I think Jacob was going to pull up the presentation. We were having similar issues to John. So,
Hey, good. Jacob, make me look good there, partner. I appreciate that.
oh my gosh.
How's that?
Seriously.
These guys
Okay. So let's see, we got our first one here.
Oh.
So this is over, a lot of you would be familiar with the Carpenter area of the property. It's been there for about 20 years and it's been they kind of started to develop and it's been in a
Sorry,
way
Kim.
abandoned, for quite some time. Okay, we can go up to the first one.
Yeah,
We can do a
we should
quick-
start with the first slide, right?
Oh yeah, let's go to the first one. There we go. That'd probably be a little bit easier. This would actually be the entrance towards the back of the building. We have stuff over, as far as the planes and stuff, and we have the hangars on the taxiway side, but this would be on the back side of the building where we would have offices and some retail options because we have a huge inventory. And so we end up providing that for people. We have different people come in and buy stuff. We keep a lot of stuff on hand that is kind of difficult to get sometimes. And so we offer that to a lot of people when they come in. We're a small business. We've been in business for 27 years. We started in our garage in 96. And we've been working in the air carrier. That's where we started, actually. We started with Horizon Air. That was kind of our first big customer. So we've been in the air carrier maintenance support for the full 27 years, working in air carrier, air cargo, heavy lift helicopter. Our name doesn't really describe what we do. In fact, I had somebody say something the other day, you're just a metal company. It's like, well, when we were going through and having this big brainstorming session and we started our company, we came up with this idea, Metal Innovations, and we were working primarily on structures, off-wing components, mostly at that time. Well, since then, we went into composites. We have STCs. We do on-site engineering, paint, welding, product development, manufacturing. We've done it all. I think we're kind of known as you have a problem and you can't find somebody to solve it. We'll come up with a way to help you. And especially in the way that is now with a lot of people not being able to afford or access new aircraft, they're having to keep their other stuff in the air longer, their older stuff. And so these are some of the customers that we work with. Primarily air carrier, air cargo. We do EMS work, heavy lift helicopter work, but we work a lot with air carrier. You can go ahead and go to the next one. One of the things a lot of people don't realize is to work on air carrier, it's not just, hey, I've got a toolbox and I'm a mechanic. We're on the case register and we can't advertise that necessarily. They really actually tell us we can't advertise it. But what it is it's like a certification process and they come out and audit us every 2 years. We can have any air carrier that belongs to this organization. So we'll have someone that we've never worked with. We've had people from Hawaii and Wisconsin and back east and Alaska. We have a lot of carriers we work with in Alaska, but different air carriers will send out an inspector every 2 years. They go through, and what it does is it allows us to work on any air carrier, what's a percentage, like 95% belong to the case organization, because they all have an auditor certified on staff that is part of this group. But it allows us to work on any air carrier's products without them coming out and inspecting us. So if they come out and let's say a Delta comes out to the airport and they've got ramp damage, which happens more often than we would all like to think would happen. But when they come out, we could actually go work on that aircraft without them having to come out and inspect us. So that's one of the things I think that's a little bit different, I think. And one reason why we think one of the assets we think we would be to the Salem Airport is it's not us looking at, hey, how can we do, get into that industry? That's what we do. We support them. And we do really think that because the maintenance is such a big issue for a lot of these guys and what they do if they have ramp damage. If they have somebody run into it with a baggage cart or something, how do they get it repaired quickly so they aren't losing time in the air? We would be able to offer that. We do it now, actually. We do a lot of it as AOG work where we fly people. We've had people all over the world doing this type of work. But it would give you someone on the field. And I think that it might help the case a little bit with getting an air carrier out there because they wouldn't have to worry about how do they get somebody there. We're a Part 145 repair station. I mean, one huge advantage to that for us is we can actually go through, we have a huge training program here. So we've had guard members and stuff, which we love. We're really excited about that opportunity because I think a lot of times they go through and they get all the experience within the military and then they get out and it's hard to put that over into the private sector. We've come up with different ways of doing that, but we also can issue repairmen license, certifications, I guess, so they can actually work on aircraft under our observation and things, which gives them kind of a pathway in to build the hours to be able to maybe go for their A&P certificate. We're parts manufacturer, we're critical parts manufacturer, we're certified in that. We've done all kinds of things, including going through and taking old drawings for the heavy lift, for the Sky Crane aircraft, and developing and building blades from scratch out of old Sikorsky drawings. And it took us like 3 years to get 36 to the market, but we did do that along with a lot of other things. Several STCs, multiple STCs, and a lot of proprietary part repairs that we've developed, especially for air carrier. We're a Textron service center. We're also a Dair service center. And both of us are born and raised here. I grew up in the Canby area. My dad was my high school principal, and Craig came from a farming background. Actually, his family has been here for multiple generations over in like the St. Paul, Donald area. We're looking at right now, we're just under 30. We've actually just brought in 2 more people. We've been getting really good applicants lately. I think it's just kind of changed up a little bit. People are starting to shift in the market again. But we're just under, we'll be at 30 within the next month with the 2 people we're bringing on staff. Most everybody's a mechanic, A&P mechanic. We do have some that we've certified as repairmen. I'd like to say repairmen are women, but they still call it repairmen. They should call it something else, I think. We're projecting 75 by the 5th year. We're located out there, and that's something we're really excited about. We've been kind of starting to work with CTEC a little bit. We'd love to do a partnership with the Guard. And I think that there's a lot of people coming out of Lane and things, but there's not a lot of opportunity for high paying jobs in the maintenance side. And like I said, with what we do, we're doing anything from engineering to, basic like welding, TIG welding. We have a certified TIG welding, to project management, to, a supply chain. We just have a lot of opportunity in that, I think, to really offer some great opportunities for people down there. That's what we're really excited. I've been involved in workforce development for years. I was part of the workforce development for Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County for like 7 years. And it's really important to us. I think that we could really do some really great things down there. We're excited about that. Let's see, we do national, local, international. I mean, we're all over the place. We've been just about everywhere, I think, with sending people out in the field. Let's see.
Next slide.
Yeah, go ahead and do the next slide. Do you want to go through the hangar layout, or do you want me to go ahead and do that? Go ahead and do that. Okay. So we're looking at just under 40,000 square feet between the 2 hangars. There's one out there that we're hoping that we'll be able to add on. It depends on line of sight issues. We're hoping to be able to add on the front because it's a little bit shallow for the type of work we're doing now, but it'll work for, I think, what we're doing initially as we build out the rest of it. We'll have production shops. We're gonna have welding, composite paint. We'll have engineering, huge inventory out there. Let's see, we'll have a training center. So we're really excited about that. I think there's some cool things we can do. We do a lot of different stuff. And I think that there's some cool things we could do with the community and stuff, and maybe do some weekend kind of, skill set training and things like that. We're excited about that. The building design, and Jacob can probably jump in on that. We're really trying to go just very environmentally friendly and green. We're hoping to kind of set a standard for out there that would really maybe inspire people to look at different ways they could do modifications and things to their building. But go ahead, Jacob, you can kind of jump in on that.
Sure. We just met with the with the Energy Trust to talk with them about a couple different programs that they have to offer. One is just getting the existing or the future facility running in a high efficiency sort of way. Energy is their primary focus. The other is working on programs to help help us upgrade the existing equipment we have to ultra high performing equipment. And along with that, and what we're doing with Energy Trust, as well as on our own, because it makes sense financially, it makes sense environmentally, and it can also be a showcase where for what we can do in an industrial and avionic setting is solar photovoltaics, geothermal heat pumps, high efficiency lighting, and as well as other services such as and options that we could provide, such as flexible work shifts for the employees, and overall a better environment, which will then increase the bottom line, which is production, because they'll be a lot more comfortable and feel like they're taken care of. This is the site itself. The Penske rental is in this area. If you guys can see my cursor. This is the fuel area here. The Carpenter hangar is this building right here. And our goal long-term wise, which is seen here, is to add on to it, depending on future improvements to the airport regarding the air traffic control tower. This is the new hangar that we're proposing. It is 24,000 square feet. The existing Carpenter hangar is 9,000 square feet, and the add-on would be an additional 2,000. Overall, this building is going to be around 63,000 square feet. So it's pretty substantial. Around the edge of it, we have parking. And then in the core, between the two hangars, we have the shops that Kim had just mentioned, the composites, the welding shops, the metal, the sanding, grinding. That's where also we have our training center. And they're centrally located so that they can access both sides of the both hangars. On the upper floor is where the offices and potentially a pilot's lounge is. It makes sense from views and also working with existing setbacks that are part of our constraints. In this photo or this rendering here, right here is our main entry with our parts delivery bay and door there, and then future build out space that could be retail or maybe office expansion. It's really kind of up in the air at this point. Now from the other side, what you see is the two hangars. This is the existing one, and this is the newer hangar over here. Solar panels, green roof to collect and filter out the rainwater from the roofs, as well as our deck. Here you can see our stacks for the composite oven. The composite room is located right in this area. And it all works with the existing taxiway here and the existing apron that's adjacent to it. Do you guys have any questions about the physical building before we move on? Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. I'll turn it back over to you, Kim.
So I think one of the things, like I said, that would be an advantage, I think, for the goals that you guys are trying to meet with the air the air service that you're trying to get out there is having a location on the field. We can send people out to those locations, but having something there and saying, hey, we've got air carrier certified maintenance on the field, I think is going to help your cause a little bit in attracting those. So it's one thing they don't have to worry about. And it's a customer, like I said, you know, that we've worked with forever. And we would also probably have an opportunity to maybe bring some of those people because they have been our customers for a really long time. It seems like there's always new ones popping up here lately. We've had a couple that we're actually trying to get on certificate right now. So, and I guess, you know, with the services and things, I think we have some services out there maybe you guys haven't had as much in the past. And it won't be for everybody. I mean, what we do is, I mean, it's with our particular stuff, everything is certified, all the materials, all of the hardware, I mean, that's just what we have to do for the air carrier. We've kind of been, it's funny because you go through now with the requirements that the FAA has for drug testing and all of these different things. We were doing it long before it was required by the FAA because it was required by the case organization. And we do, I would say, I mean, our pay range is fairly high for the industry. We really look for livable wages. And one thing we're really excited about Salem is we've encouraged a lot of our employees over the years to locate there because it was more affordable. And so it's really going to be a great benefit for them. They'll be able to be closer to their families. That's important to us. They won't have to spend as much money on transportation. We're excited about that because I think it's going to be a really great benefit for them to just have more quality time at home, but also be able to mitigate their costs a little bit, especially with the gas prices and things the way they are right now. So I don't know if you have anything else, or does anybody have any questions? Is that our last one, Jacob?
That is.
Okay.
It's a beautiful building. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ma'am? Hello,
Yes.
ma'am?
Yes.
Hi, this is Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe with the National Guard across the way. I heard you talk about partnering with the Guard, and you might need some more employees and things. And I would absolutely love to talk further with you about this. We have a maintenance company, what we call M-Day, which is our part-time force. So we have about 50 mechanics that are, you know, they're trained. Most of them are not AMPs at the moment. But they do work on aircraft, and they would be fantastic individuals. And I would love to have an opportunity for somewhere close by they can work, because I have a limited budget. I can only hire so many of them, and a lot of them are great. So if you are serious about partnering with us, I'd love to roll the ball forward on that and see what we can do.
Absolutely. I mean, whenever we're completely open, whenever you want to sit down and have a meeting. I mean, we have immediate openings now. We're probably going to have people down there sooner rather than later, and kind of see what you have. We have several Guard members working for us now, actually, from Salem.
Oh, from our helicopter unit here at the.
Yeah, base. Jake Johnson is one of them, and he's been working for us for the last almost 2 years now.
Yeah, okay. I know him from a couple of years ago. It's been a while. That's great. Well then, okay, so yeah, he can be the conduit into our facility, but just, yeah, if you want to meet and talk further, just give me a holler.
Oh, absolutely. So we can just exchange, we'll figure out how to exchange emails. I don't know how all this works, so.
Yeah,
they all
help you out with all that.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Yeah, if you want to send him over all of our contact information, we would love to, like I said, sooner the better. So if you have time, that would be amazing.
No, we appreciate the opportunity.
Really appreciate it.
Looks
but
like
I think there are some cool things, and like I said, with having a repair station, I think that we have a little bit more flexibility in being able to help people. I mean, we have a closer, I guess, that kind of a tie to that, because our brother-in-law, he was a retired Marine. He was a lifer, pretty much. And so we just really have a lot of passion about that and would love to get together to do something to maybe help some of those guys transition.
Looks like we have a couple other questions as well.
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, just a quick one, just to make sure I understand the bigger picture here. Is this an additional location for your business, or are you actually moving down here?
We'll be moving down there. We're going to start out, we're going to be kind of split for a bit because it's going to take a bit to build out what we're wanting down there just because of building supplies. It's just going to take a bit, but that will be, the intent would be a permanent location down there.
Good to start out with. It'll be a second location on our.
Yeah,
our
yeah, it'll be a
station.
second location initially while we kind of start developing that out there and get the, because we just have, and if anybody ever wants to come up for a tour, we'd love to host you. I mean, you'd probably get a better feel for what we do and the magnitude of this move. It's a huge move because it's not just taking a hangar and some aircraft and jacks and a few toolboxes down there. I mean, we've got back shops and it's a pretty extensive undertaking.
Awesome. John Foley.
Sure, yeah, I just got this thing up on Google Earth and I'm looking at the slot there and it's a nice open, empty, undeveloped space. So that would be great to get somebody in there. I did have one question. You talked about, your ability to do the air carrier repairs.
Yes.
Is there enough room in that little pad there to get a larger aircraft back in there?
Yeah, the taxiway and stuff will be fine on. The building will be a little bit limited, and that's why we're hoping with the tower, we'd like to go up in height and things, not on that building in particular, but on the new building a little bit. So we could be limited, but for the regional side, we'll be able to cover all of that as long as they're within the regional size of aircraft.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay. Can we do a motion to recommend that the city council support this development and approve long-term lease with Metal Innovations?
I so move.
I second that.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. John Foley.
Yes, in favor.
Okay. Doug Brenizer.
Yes.
Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe.
Yes.
Okay. Neil White.
Yes.
Mike Morrow.
Yes.
Arnaud Rusev.
Yes.
Kat Pence. Yes. Okay. So
Very good.
Well,
Thank you,
so
Craig
much.
and Kim and Jacob for coming. You're welcome to stay on if you'd like. Otherwise, we'll let you go and we'll be in touch going
Well,
forward.
And thanks again, you guys. We really appreciate all the time and we're really excited about being part of the community.
looking forward to having you down here.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, items for commission discussion. We have one regarding the frequency of meetings. Doug emailed me earlier this month regarding that topic. Doug, did you want to say something about that?
Sure, just quickly. Since things are picking up and we've got a lot more things on our plate than we've ever had, or at least since I've been a part of the commission, and it doesn't require a lot of discussion. My suggestion would be that we add 2 meetings rather than 4 a year, try to work in 6 per year, just so that we can stay informed on what's going on. It's pretty tough sometimes to cover everything we need to cover in an hour 4 times a year. So I just sent a note to Kat and said, let's kick it around and see if there's any interest in what that would take.
Okay. Does anyone else have thoughts on that to start?
It won't affect your pay.
So Doug, I was looking through the rules of procedure that we have, and
Yes.
So a couple things, we can totally change the rules and regulations as needed if we do decide that we want to add some extra meetings. However, in section 3, B and C, we have our quarterly meetings, and that was changed from monthly to quarterly a while back before I was here, just because they were getting to be so many meetings with not a lot of information. But one thing that hasn't changed is that the chair can call special meetings at any time. So next Tuesday, if we wanted to have a meeting, as long as we give them 24 hours notice, them being the city, we can totally do that. So just need to email. So I would propose not changing the rules to to every other month, but just leaving it as quarterly. But then anybody that wants to have a meeting, just contact the chair and let's have a meeting about whatever we need to have a meeting about.
The only problem I have with that, Kat, is that if it's not on people's calendar, we won't be able to get a crew together. We
Understand that.
it's for my purposes. I schedule most of what I'm doing around our meetings, and if something were to happen in a hurry, probably couldn't. And the other thing is, a lot of what we're starting to see now is we're hearing about it after the fact, and I would love to know about it going in as much as possible, rather than read it in the paper and say, gee, I wonder why we didn't know about that. So that was one of the reasons I was hoping we could.
I would agree.
Yeah. Arnaud, you had your hand up. What's going on?
Sorry.
Well, I agree with what Doug just said about any information after the fact. How would you call a special meeting if you don't know about it?
There you go. So if y'all want to change the rules, I believe the procedure is that we need to add as an action item for the next meeting, or we could call a special meeting for that. Is that the case, John? I was trying to find that.
That is correct, right? If the commission is going to change its rules of procedure, that's would need to be public notice and all of that as an action item. So it could be a future meeting or it could be a special meeting at any time. And I would just throw out too, it doesn't have to be just the number of meetings. You can change the day of the week. You can change the time of day. A lot of city boards and commissions are done during the daytime. So there's just other things that you can think about. If you're going to think about changing your rules of procedure, it might be worthwhile to look through them all and see if there are any other changes that you want to make. And then the only other thing you have to make sure, and this wouldn't fall in that category, but any other changes that you might consider, we just have to make sure there's no conflict with any existing local or state laws or ordinances. But otherwise, yep, the commission can decide its own business.
Okay. Awesome. So would you like to put that on the action items for next meeting then?
I guess we need a proposal. Do we need to figure out frequency and if we're going to change our rules, which we kind of had 4 quarterly meetings, I think we need to have a proposal to change it to something else. So that might take a little finagling.
Right.
But that could be something we decide in, I guess I don't know exactly how to do that. If we need to be in a quorum to discuss this, or do somebody take it as an action to propose something specific and then
yeah, so in this meeting, you can just discuss it openly. You can't take any action to vote or anything like that. It can be an action item on, again, either the January meeting or a special meeting between now and January, if you'd like. And then what I would propose we do, and I think when we did this back in 2015, I believe that I added the proposed changes to the packet. So red line, Word document, so that the proposed changes that you all have discussed are in there. So those could be things that you could talk about. You can't talk about them in a quorum. I mean, in a public setting, but whoever's proposing whatever changes can send those changes to me. I can put them in the document, and then you can certainly bat it around during the meeting, and then the final version would be what you vote on.
Oh, Kat, if it were up to me, and it's certainly not, but if it were up to me, we'd have a meeting sometime in November to get all that ironed out so that we're starting the year with a schedule. Or if it's going to be changed, that we would know the dates out through next year.
Okay,
Yeah,
we can definitely discuss that after the meeting.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I mean, if we talk about doing it and put it on an agenda for next time, that'll be January, and then we'll discuss. And so, I mean, we're talking about, like, we might have something that would come into force in February or March. I mean, strategic plan, or the airport plan is almost done by then, to give you an example. So I do feel, especially with who knows where we'll be at with the air service. So I do feel like there's a lot of activity going on. Yeah, it's going to slow down a bit during the holidays, but there's a lot of momentum. I'm supportive of, whatever it needs to be, a special meeting to talk about it, or however is the appropriate and lawful way to make it happen. I'm supportive of the notion of more meetings.
Yeah. Kat, could we call a special meeting in November?
I am out of town most of the month, but yes, we can definitely call a special meeting. Yeah, I don't have, of course, I'm at home. I don't have my schedule in front of me, but is this something that we could discuss via email and check everyone's schedules for a special meeting?
I don't think we can do that, can we, John?
Can't do a group email like that. I mean, you can't
Okay.
deliberate or debate over email. It's the same type of thing.
Or for
But,
scheduling?
yeah, if,
Doodle poll or something like that?
yeah, if everybody wants to, yeah, I have to think through how to do that. I don't know. I mean, I'll ask Irma if we know how to do a doodle poll. I know I've done a lot of those. Other people have sent out open times and things, so we could do it that way. It doesn't have to be on a Wednesday night either. It can be any day of the week. So.
Perfect.
Irma, take a note if you would, if you're listening, if you can help us figure out how to get with these folks and do some potential dates and times for a meeting in November.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
No problem. And the other thing I guess I want to say is, you know, I never intend to have anything come back to you through the back door. A lot of what has been, particularly with commercial air service, that's come back to you or come through the papers has not come from the city. It's come externally to city council in written letters or written testimony or other methods. And the city council has made motions on the council floor for things that weren't on their agenda as action items. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, because my intent is never to make sure you're not informed. In fact, just the opposite. But if I ever do, or if you ever feel like I am, please let me know. There's a lot of moving pieces right now, as you suggested, with commercial air service, and it will be with the airport master plan too. So it does get difficult to track. I do think it's important to keep you all informed, and I don't want you to be uninformed.
Totally understand that, John. Any other items for discussion this evening? Okay, well, if we don't have a special meeting, happy holidays. I hope you all have a wonderful season. And if we do see each other, I will see you in November. Call this meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
See you all
right.
soon. See you in November.